Good morning, everybody. This is like the coolest and weirdest thing. It's a cross between a silent disco and a medical conference. Wow. Okay, so thank you very much, Bindi, for introducing us. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to dive straight in. The big question that I want to ask all of you guys is, why are you trying to get rid of me? Tell me a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, and why on earth you are effectively eradicating little folk. Like
we're not trying to eradicate you in particular because you're a very good doctor. So maybe we're going to try with the not very good doctors first. So the idea here is that you have so many people that need the doctors all the time, and you just don't have enough doctors. So the concept that we at Your.MD have developed is this idea of pre-primary care, where you can use digital health technology, digital health services, to try to shift as much of the burden from the primary care doctors to the people themselves. I don't call them patients because we're all patients, so essentially we're all people or customers. And I believe that artificial intelligence in particular can really help people do a lot of the work that today is done by primary care doctors, because if you look at NHS statistics, up to 80% of visits to the GP are for minor ailments that could be dealt with self-care. So why not try to empower people with AI to help themselves?
So you're not trying to get rid of me per se. You're just trying to take a bit of burden off me. I think Ali might be trying to get rid of me. I'm pretty convinced that you've got like bigger plans.
So you and I have known each other, Jack, for what? 5 years, 10 years, right? Something like that. I've been trying to get rid of you for 10 years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, not as a friend. Not as a friend.
I know, not as a friend.
Still, yeah.
And you're not going to go away. Look, Jack. Here's the reality. I mean, whichever way you want to look at it. This healthcare we have, the $10 trillion we are spending on healthcare every year, goes to 50% of the world population. 50% of people have absolutely no access to healthcare, zero. 5 billion people have no access to surgery, nothing. If you are in India, if you are in China, and you live in a rural area, when you see a doctor, 80% of your diagnosis is wrong. And that, guys, is for medical problems. If you have a mental health problem, do you know what we do with you? What do you think we do with you? We put you in jail. That's what we do with you. Like 2,000 people in County Court Jail in Chicago are there for no other reason tonight because of mental health issues. Healthcare is broken, and there is not enough doctor to fix it. The drama of whether we get rid of doctors or not aside, we need 5 million more doctors out there. And whether this is done by us or by you or by somebody else is irrelevant to humanity. What humanity needs is another solution.
Matthew, is Deloitte really trying to get rid of me?
No. So, I mean, in fairness, we don't really operate front of house in the same way. Where we're trying to get rid of effort is more in using AI behind the scenes, which is still very important, and in automation. What I would say, though, in the context of this, is, as Ali says, it's democratization of access is the key here, right? How do you take the best medical expertise and how do you take the best understanding of these conditions and make it available to the many and not just the few? But we should also recognize that is an atrivial problem to solve. And the other observation I would make, which I'm sure we'll come back to, is that in the absence of fixing other strategic parts of our health system, for example, the data backbone that comes not just from your systems but then integrates into others, is just as important in my view. Otherwise we are fixing one small piece of what is a very, very large and complex puzzle.
Claire, I'm still pretty convinced you're trying to get rid of me. In fact, you're trying to get rid of yourself as well. Tell me all about your cunning plans and why I need to worry about my pension.
Look, I have to agree with my fellow panelists. The WHO and World Bank published a report just a few months ago saying that more than half the world's population lacks any access to basic healthcare services. And actually in China, apparently the average consultation length, doctor-patient consultation length is 2 minutes. In India, it's 1.3 minutes, and in Bangladesh, it's 43 seconds. And if you honestly think that you can have a quality consultation during that time, build a doctor-patient relationship, and avoid errors, I mean, it's just impossible. So it's about scaling up the expertise to reach everyone in the world and putting world-class expertise in the hands of everybody. So it's an access thing and it's quality as well.
So, okay, so here's a sort of a question. If we had 5 million more doctors, and somehow we'll be able to afford that and have those people available at all times. And would you still be doing what you're doing? Or is my decision making flawed? It's not just the numbers of me, because according to you guys, I'm pretty damn bad at what I do. I mean, really, I'm asleep when you want me to be awake. I get diagnoses wrong. Sometimes I get them right, but it takes ages. So if there's 5 million more of a problem, then that's not a good thing. I still think you want to get rid of me.
Well, the problem is that to make the 5 million extra doctors, it costs on average £500,000 each. So that's, first of all, extremely expensive. And then you have the human fallibility problem, as you were saying, because obviously you need to keep yourself up to date. It's very unlikely that you will know all the conditions that are out there and you'll be able to actually master them in your own mind, because the probabilistic problem is a non-linear problem and it's very difficult to tackle in your head, even with very simple situations. You have bias, obviously, because when you're tired, at the end of the day, you'll probably tend to dismiss patients faster. You will tend to diagnose the things that you know better. So you are inherently flawed as a human being, so those 5 million people, unfortunately, would come with that baggage as well. So this technology can, I believe, increase the standard at a level that is much higher than it is today and create basically a baseline of accuracy and precision and sort of up-to-dateness, which today doesn't exist. It would make the whole system much better.
And just to build on that's a really important point, because there's two things there. One is decision support, is what we're talking about in that context, helping people arrive at better decisions faster. The other piece is, think about the workflow. So in pre-primary, what can you actually learn about a patient before they even present that you still might present with in a consultation? So imagine a patient arrives to you having been engaged with an app, having engaged with the technology first. That information is presented to you, there is processing that information, and it then helps you arrive at the right decision. So you're changing the whole workflow. And that's one of the things that happens in AI. People don't think about changing workflows, they just try and replace bits and say, oh, this bit will replace this bit will replace that bit. What you should be doing is think about the whole path, and actually how do we use pre-primary with AI, as well as decision support in the medical context, as well as further and further on.
So I want to just get a show of hands here. Who here is, say, less than 10% happy with the brains like mine that currently provide them with healthcare? Less than 10%. 10 to 20%. Up to 50% happy with people like me. Ooh. 75%? 100%. 2 or 3. And are those people with 100% 100% happy all of the time? Like, am I super available all the time? There's no hands. I think you guys have got a market.
But they probably are related to a doctor. They can call up their uncle and say, "Uncle, I've got a
yeah, we should have
headache."
said that. Absolutely. You can't say it if you've got access to your own kind of AI on the end of the phone.
Jack, can I say something that I think is super important? There's lots of artificial intelligence being developed on the value chain of healthcare, which is obviously a very deep and long value chain. But what gets me really excited about pre-primary care is that it's the top or the bottom of the pyramid. So pre-primary care can actually impact everyone, every one of you, every one of us. Well, you know, the genomics and all the other stuff is great, but it's only going to affect some people that have that specific problem. So the beauty of what we are all doing, because we're all trying to achieve the same thing, is the universality of this effort. Because as Ali was saying, that half of the population in the world, more or less, doesn't have any access to healthcare. This can give them a base, sort of first point of access that can give them some help.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about that, because access is something which is quite close to my heart. Do a lot of stuff in Southeast Asia. You know, there's a little hospital I work with that is the leading center of excellence for pediatric oncology, kids cancer in the whole of Cambodia, 20 million people, and they can only treat 30 kids a year. Okay? 30 kids a year. 1% survival rate for basically a curable leukemia in Cambodia compared to here, which is 95%. Okay, astonishingly big difference in the ability to, you know, it's not because they don't have access to the chemo, they just can't deal with the side effects. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that it's not just about access to diagnosis. It also comes down to access of, the right kind of treatments, the right kind of monitoring, using AI to be able to replace people that don't exist in other environments. And I think the other thing that I want to press you guys on to answer is the fact that that isn't just about here in Cambodia. It's also about here and Glasgow.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So I really want to get to this point. We talk about, I love this guy, but it's like, we've got to save the planet. But the planet doesn't just need information, it also needs actual care.
Can I take that? So I agree with that completely. So what we find is that you can't make healthcare accessible, affordable, put it in the hands of everybody by just giving them, in our case, I don't know about others, by just giving them information. What we find is 40% of the people who use Babylon then come and need to see a doctor. So we now provide services for the National Health Service. 4% of everybody below the age of 40 who lives in central London now is a Babylon NHS patient. And that number is growing by 1% every 2 to 3 minutes, right? So that it's just exploding for us. And what we are finding is that while we can keep them out of a doctor's case half the time, the other half the time we need to connect them with our doctors, which we do. And then when our doctors see them, we can then, 1 in every 10 times we need to see them physically. So we now have about 10 physical places in London. We will be announcing shortly that we've just hired one of the world's top architects to actually redefine what does a physical primary care unit should look like. What would happen if Apple built primary care? Then they have chronic diseases. You cannot ignore that. So to us, I guess our approach to provision of healthcare is one of Apple. Right, end to end. Once you come through the door, we want to keep you and serve you as long as we can until we drop you at the very end into the hands of somebody who can deal with you and bring you back.
Okay, Ali, but the thing is that you're still needing to see people. What I'm trying to get to is the fact that, okay, you've managed to sort of diagnose things quicker, and you're doing it 24/7, and you've done it cheaper than calling up somebody like me, and you're getting to your shiny Apple new style healthcare center, but you're still seeing people.
Yes.
Where are we going after that? And how does that scale when we can't put Apple centers in places like, rural poor countries and whatever? Well, where are you seeing the movement of AI going in terms of actual, not just diagnostics, but actual treatment, follow-up, and so on? That for me is a very important
So you're talking about effectively clinical decision support. How do you make an individual in Cambodia who may have a limited experience of seeing certain cancers, for example, the best clinician they can be? And the way you do that is by putting technologies around them that help them interrogate those medical notes, analyse that information, not just based on their own experience, because they won't have seen enough, but based on the experience of all of the experts you can find in the world, for example. And that's where the democratization piece comes in, because you're deploying technology that allows you to bring all that expertise almost to the head of one person. That's a very powerful use case, and we are seeing that begin to emerge. I mean, I used to work for IBM Watson Health. That was the premise of the Watson Health platform, or the Watson for Oncology, right? That's what we were trying to do.
Yes.
Now, there's challenges in that, because when you train a system like that, it carries the lens of how it's trained. So you train a system in the US, it carries that lens into another market, so that it's not as easy as it sounds. However, okay, so that gets you from diagnostics to treatment recommendation. You've then got to start keeping that going. And I don't think I've seen yet how we then translate that into system change in the context you're describing, because you've still then not got enough nurses, not got enough information flow, and you still need people, right? In this context.
Are we kicking the problem, further down the field? Well, Claire, what are we doing about that? What in your view is the state of the art in actually not just kicking the problem further down the field, but actually doing something about it?
So the way I see it, with all of these technologies, we're still going to need people, but we can shift what they need to focus on. So if we can take a whole load of work away from them, that where individuals empowered by technology can self-care, self-manage, make the whole system more efficient, provide information and guidance to the most appropriate care, reduce the waste, then we can have the people working on the things they really need to be working on and make the whole system more sustainable.
So I believe we've only got a couple more minutes. Is that right, Bindi? Where's Bindi? Are we run out of time? We got one more minute. Wow. Whoa. Okay, that was a quick panel. I think we've got time for a single statement from all of you guys. I think I've firmly established that I'm too expensive, not available, not very good, and certainly not serving the rest of the planet enough. So I look forward to you guys changing all of that. If I was a medical student today, and I was looking forward to a future, what would I be learning that I'm not learning now? Matteo.
Well, I think you'll be learning to use these technologies to scale yourself up. You know, this technology will make you more effective and more efficient. So it's a mechanism to scale up the service. The thing that you do have, though, that we struggle to have yet is trust, because doctors have trust, and trust is very difficult to get. So I think that the biggest challenge for this technology is trust, and that's what we're spending a lot of time on to try to get right.
Brilliant. Claire.
I think you'll be learning how to have a different type of doctor-patient relationship. The power relationship is changing with these technologies. It's not necessarily doctor knows best anymore. You might also be learning it's a good idea to think about starting a technology company in the space.
Great, Matthew.
I think we place an enormous responsibility on our clinicians to learn in a very short period of time everything they need to learn forever almost, and then try and keep on top of that as they go forward. I think that is increasingly an unsustainable way to do this. And so our new medical community will learn how to integrate how they practice medicine with the use of technology, and trusting those technologies in a way perhaps they don't so far, to help them arrive at almost a blended decision, which is the best of the tech with the best of their own knowledge.
Ali, the final word.
What was the question?
What do I need to be learning as a medical student today?
Listen, here is the thing. What we know today, we know is only 50% of what we will know in 2 years' time. We also know that in 5 years' time, what we know today is only 25% of that is 10% of what we know in 10 years' time. What you need to know as a medical student is it doesn't really matter what you learn. What you learn will be a tiny proportion of what matters by the time you're in the middle of your career. We spend far too much of time, all our people, you do, I do, on the 10% that is not going to matter in the next 10 years, as opposed to figuring out on the 10%, that 90% that matters. Spend all your time, all your energy, find brilliant people. I see a lot of Babylonians in the group, hey guys, hey team, but spend finding brilliant people who could deal with the current 10%, 20%, 30%, and put all your energy into what is coming next, because it's what is coming next that will define your fortune and the future, not what you have today.
Well, you've just established that in 20 years of practice and goodness knows how much study, I probably now have about 1% of the original knowledge that is probably useful, and I completely agree. These guys are really changing the profession. It's going to be radically different in the next 5-10 years. Watch this space. Thank you very much to a brilliant panel. We've been cut short, I think, because I'm too expensive, probably, aren't I? Yeah, anyway, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.